Hi, we are looking at architecting fraud risk management framework in an organization. In part 1, we saw some of the concepts of FRM, the fraud risk management, what is a fraud triangle, integrity triangle, and we saw some of the components of FRM. We also saw the maturity model and how the components link to the maturity model, how to evaluate an organization's maturity model with respect to the components. Link to part 1 of the video would be available as part of this video's description. Now we are going to look at part 2, which is implementation. So we are getting into the nitty-gritties of actually implementing an FRM. We'll be looking at some of the methodologies that can be adopted, and no implementation is without challenges. And that too, for FRM, you can expect significant challenges in implementing an FRM. We're going to look at some of the key challenges and what could be a way forward. And the third one is leveraging technology. We're going to see how technology can be used in FRM. So these are indicators for further discussion and thought processes. And in part 3, which will be another video, we're going to look at payroll function and then see how FRM can be implemented specifically for payroll function. Let's look at the methodologies. There are predominantly two methodologies that can be adopted. One is called as the top-down approach, the other is called as the bottoms-up approach. As the name suggests, top-down would start with strategic objectives. It is like, why is it that FRM is to be implemented? Is there any key strategic risks that needs to be identified, that needs to be addressed? And then assess at the enterprise level. Assess the risk at the enterprise level and then evaluate governance and control, and then once we evaluate the environment, right? Once we evaluate the control environment, like we saw told at the top, the other integrity triangle, fraud triangle that we saw in the first part, evaluate that control environment and then come into businesses and then drill down into business processes and then define key control and then define key risks and controls, provide responsibilities and develop the risk control matrix. This is a top-down approach, meaning we start with the strategic objectives and we drill down that to the relevant processes. The other approach that can be adopted is the bottoms-up approach, wherein it starts with the underlying process. The first step would be to identify process level risks and then map the control, do a gap analysis. This is a place where there can be management action plans to address the gap, and then we basically aggregate or consolidate the risks and control, and then look at enterprise level risks and then integrate that with enterprise level risks. This will also help to ensure that the process level risk integrates with enterprise level risks, and then develop the FRC. Now, if you notice, for both top down and bottoms up, the basic objective would be to develop the fraud risk control matrix. Now, how do we approach that is what would basically differ. Now, are these two the only way that it can be done? There are multiple ways, but one such way that we can think through is to combining, getting the best of both. So, how that can be done? Start with the top down to set the strategic context and then identify high level risks. So start with enterprise level strategic objectives and then what are the key risks arising out of those objectives that can stop those objectives or the organization from achieving those objectives, and then follow it with a bottoms up approach, wherein we don't lose the strategic context, we don't lose the overall context. At the same time, we look at the processes, we look at the underlying processes and ensure that the risks at the process level are also identified. But the basic thing here is what we exclude. Obviously, when we look at risks and controls, we want almost all the risks to be covered by a lot of controls. That's obviously not how it's going to work. We are going to look at risk tolerance, we're going to look at the impact of the risk, and then identify only those key risks that we need to address as part of FRM. One of the key underlying things, whether you take top down or whether you take bottoms up, is to have a fraudster mindset. This is critical. Like how we have discussed it, in the slide 1, it becomes very important that whatever may be the approach that we take, we clearly have this fraudster mindset, because the thing that differentiates, or the key aspect that would differentiate a general routine risk control matrix to a fraud risk control matrix is that F, which is basically the fraudster mindset. This is a critical aspect. Now, let us see some of the key challenges and possible solutions. I know it's a busy slide. We will zoom in for each and every challenge. One of the key challenges that we can see is the sustained leadership support. Now, there are many organizations where the start is brilliant. They get probably the costliest consultant to do this analysis. Let's say there is a fantastic FRM that is there, meaning the fraud risk control matrix is there. Everything is perfect. I mean, there is additional team members being added into the team. But if that leadership support is not consistent, or it is not a strategic priority, then it is very, very difficult to sustain. And then how this can be addressed? Well, this can be addressed by engaging leadership, by demonstrating value. Unless the leadership team knows that in the overall organizational context, what is the value that we are adding to the existing framework, to the existing controls that we have, if and only if this can be demonstrated, can the leadership have a sustained interest on FRM. And one of the best way to do that is to align FRM to organization's strategic goal. For example, protecting reputation, ensuring regulatory compliance and safeguarding assets. Let's say protecting reputation is a strategic risk. And then how FRM can address that? If that value can be demonstrated, then leadership will keep investing. The second key challenge that we see is the dynamic nature of frauds and risk. Because a fraudster, keep in mind that a fraudster is desperate. He or she will continue to look at weaknesses in the system, will continue to innovate. So the nature of the risk is very, very dynamic. And technology, AI can be used to tell how to do a fraud. So you give the processes to say any GPT technology, and then say ChatGPT or Copilot, and it will give you the ways in which a fraud can be done. So there are ways in which it is just unimaginable. Now, how do we do that? Bringing in agility is a key. Unless the framework and the FRCM, the fraud risk control matrix, is agile. What do we mean by agile? Agile is the ability to stay relevant. It should not be like I will have an FRCM designed 6 months or 1 year or 2 years or 3 years back and then forget about it. That is not going to happen. Every time, whenever there is a change, whenever there is a new regulation, or whenever there is a new change in the process, this FRCM needs to be revisited, to see, okay, is there any additional risks? Are there any elevated risks that needs to be addressed? And one other way of doing it is horizon scanning, where you look at what is happening around. We keep our ears and eyes open, and then look at, okay, what is happening within that organization, and is there any stress? Is there any stress within the organization? Are people being desperate? For example, there is no adequate hikes, so there is a lot of motivation to get things done, or the top management is say found to be guilty of something, and then which will basically have a cascading impact on the others in the organization. And stress testing is an important way of confirming if the FRCM is adequate. By stress testing, you can look at scenarios and processes which can actually test whether the control would work or not. Testing different scenarios, maybe doing some test transactions to see whether those will be caught by the existing governance framework. Those are some of the ways in which we can build agility into the FRC. The third important aspect is the culture and structure. Let's say that an organization is having multiple subsidiaries, global operations, diverse service lines, multiple geos, and there is cross-functional teams that do lot of work. In those cases, enforcing consistent controls will become a challenge. Then you will have a lot of exceptions. You will say that, look, it doesn't work this way here. It doesn't work in, let's say, APAC. It doesn't work in North America. It doesn't work here in Mexico. It doesn't work in UK, or it doesn't work like this in so and so. So you will have those complexities coming in when you are looking at a global operation. Now, how can we do that? One of the key aspects can be to centralize the governance structure with clear roles and responsibilities. Now, there will have to be a common structure that can go through that can cut across the geos, and it has to be enforced. As far as the governance structure is concerned, that can be centralized, but the execution and control oversight can be decentralized. Meaning, what is an acceptable control, what is an acceptable deviation has to be centrally aligned and agreed upon, and then that has to be followed, or that has to be executed, and that execution can be decentralized. And the oversight can also be decentralized. This will allow for flexibility and maintain consistency and compliance across the organization. We decide what is to be implemented and the deviations and the acceptable deviations at a central level, giving adequate freedom for execution and the oversight at the decentralized level. It could be different geos, it could be different businesses, it can happen. But a centralized governance structure is a must to ensure that the FRCM or the FRM is basically implemented across the organization consistently. The fourth thing that is important, that you will face a challenge when you implement FRM, is the data corruption. High volume of transaction, and then there are multiple ERMs that talk with each other. There would be very high rate of false positives. When you start looking at data, you will see that there is phenomenally high level of false positives or false negative due to multiple combination of data. Now, if we don't have confidence, or if there are high level of false positives or false negative, the confidence FRM initiative will be lost. Now, how can we go about a solution? Focused data analytics. Now, data analytics is a abused word. Is kind of used very, very loosely. Again, AI, ML, all these are used very, very loosely. Right? So look at your organization, look at your ways of working, and then find a methodology that will work, that will fit. It need not have to be the latest, but it has to be something that's the best fit to your organization. Right? So have clear. You do not have to have thousands of algorithms running. Have 5-10 algorithms that works best, and that improves the confidence. I have seen an organization where every other day the manager or the HOD will get 10 alerts. Now on different algorithms on different alerts. The HOD will get 10 different alerts every day, right? So 10 alerts per day. You obviously then this is obviously overdoing. Have one or two alerts maximum in a day. Given that is a tall ask. Maybe weekly one or two alerts which the HOD should be looking at, and whether the HOD is taking action or not. Right? So having lot of algorithms, super complicating it is going to be a super failure. Have few, but take those as the best. Then we can have automated tools and clean data. These days, the ERMs have matured a lot. They give clean data. They are removing noise automatically. So the way in which we can get the data has improved a lot. It is about analyzing the data and then getting the best out of it. That is where the challenge is. The last one is about awareness and training. Now, they say that you can have the best control mechanism possible, right? You can have the best of the softwares, the most expensive software, world-class software in place, but humans are the weakest link in any security issue. If humans doesn't know, of course you can say I will put AI, but at the end of the day, the action has to be taken by a human. At least there will have to be a human in the loop. A lack of awareness of fraud risk or MO, meaning modus operandi, could lead to insufficient vigilance in weak fraud prevention issues. Now this is critical. It is at the end of the day, it is garbage in, garbage out. Even for AI, if we feed garbage data, AI ML, if we feed garbage data for training, it's going to only give garbage. So garbage in, garbage out is would still be even relevant for an AI or an ML age, because the data on which the AI is trained is going to give only that junk outside. Right? So lack of awareness, lack of training continues to be a key risk. Now the solution is pretty simple, but it's very difficult to implement. Scenario based training. This is very critical. Don't have a generic, high level, boring, half a day, 2 hours, 3 hour session where employees are going to sleep, are going to invariably sleep. Right? Do not have those kind of trainings. Let us have scenario based, specific to that function and role. Specific to that function and role, let us have a scenario based. We can have a scenario based training. Now, regular fraud awareness campaigns is very useful. In one organization, there used to be a fortnightly or a monthly newsletter of fraud awareness. It will actually have some of the fraud cases that the organization has seen during that month or during that quarter. A case will be detailed. Of course, it will take off the confidential thing that should not be shared, but it will give a scenario. It will basically say, okay, X was involved in so and so, and then this was found during the internal audit or external inspection or by statutory auditors, and this was the action that was taken on the individual. Fear of getting caught is the most effective tool to prevent a fraud. The fear of getting caught is the most critical thing or critical action that the organization can take to prevent a fraud. Right? So in this way, we can possibly try to address some of the key challenges. The next thing that we are going to look at is some of the technology. Of course, I am going to be a bit more generic here because I'm just kind of pointing you at the right direction and just that you can look at some of the best fit for your organization. The basic thing, in every organization, I think it is a kind of a given at this stage is rule-based analytics. Right? It's very simple to implement. It's like A more than B. Let's say POs without PR or invoice without GRN. So these are very basic things to implement rule-based analytics. It is like known patterns, look at it. Now, a maturity of it is the anomaly detection, where we go from known patterns to a discovery mode. It is called as the exploratory analytics. We are exploring, exploratory analytics, exploring discovery mode. The next in the maturity cycle comes predictive analytics. Like we can have complex pattern predicts potential fault before the event. These can be implemented through ML. These can be implemented through artificial intelligence. And the next two things, which is more of a maturity curve, is the link analysis. Now these days, with the advent of technology, these are like something which can be quickly implemented. We just kind of search for implementing link pattern analysis or implementing text analysis using natural language processing, NLP. You will be able to have step-by-step instruction. I'm just going to give you the direction with which we can look at. NLP for text mining, identifying patterns that could potentially indicate fraud. In one organization, they had implemented an analysis where the emails are scanned on a regular basis. And because emails are the property, the official emails are the property of the organization, so they can absolutely use it, search it, of course with the level of confidentiality. It basically searches it's basically Outlook. So it basically searches the server, it searches the TST files, and then identifies if there is any stress. One of the things that was implemented is to see if the email contains the word. I mean, you cannot find a word fraud, but you can find a word like not comfortable, uncomfortable, needs more approval, needs more authority. So someone is going to flag it off saying like, look, I'm not comfortable with it. I don't think that's the right thing. So not the right thing. It kind of searches for these words to identify if there is any stress, and then it flags those for a confidential review by a different team. Now these teams are other than the internal audit team. These things are generally a different team at an investigation team who basically look at these emails chains and then see if is there a stress, is there a need to do further analysis. So all this can be leveraged during the FRM implementation and FRM analysis. The next video we are going to look at implementing it for a payroll function. The top-down approach, bottom-up approach. We will look at how this can be implemented in payroll function. Thank you.